See how nice and frothy that starter is?
Works for me.
So, question, why is everybody making sourdough and making starters?
Works for me.
I put a nice pinkish rubber band where I started, and up above it more than doubled.
Works for me.
All-purpose, unbleached white flour, dark rye flour, tablespoon level of rye flour, quarter cup of the unbleached white flour, 1/4 cup of water, and a jar with a lid, a butter knife to mix. Put the flour into the jar, add the water, mix it up with the butter knife, put the cover on the jar, put a little rubber band at the level that you started at, and then put it in the closet. Wait a day. It should be nice and frothy from the natural yeasts that are in the flour. You remove about half of the starter, and I repeat. I add a 1/4 cup of the flour and a tablespoon of the dark rye flour with a 1/4 cup of water. And I mix again. So I keep repeating the removal process, or I remove half of the starter, and I keep adding the same amounts of flour and water for about 7 days. I've seen so many YouTube videos. I've read a lot of information. Some videos tell you to use all kinds of digital weighing equipment and all kinds of percentages and all this stuff, and I just did this and it worked. It seems like you're concentrating the original starter as you keep removing half of it and then feeding it or replenishing it. After about 7 days, I pretty much had a starter, and I used it to rise bread and bake bread. The important part about using a starter and baking bread is you have to let it rise longer once you mix it to the bread dough. And I'll mix about half of this starter. You can store the starter in the fridge for about a week. If you want to bake, I usually leave it in the closet for about a day. It froths up. I remove about half. I add it to the flour mixture, and I usually let that rise a number of hours, 4 or 5 hours. You can even put it in a warming tray in an oven at a very low temperature for a few minutes. That seems to help. And I have a nice frothy, pleasantly smelling starter without all the digital weighing and equipment and all this stuff. So this is what worked for me.
Works for me.
There are warnings about if it smells bad, you throw it out, and if it doesn't froth up, you start over. Yeah, you can do that. Do it. But as far as buying digital weigher in over 20 days, half a week, I don't even know what, 10 days, weighing it and this and that, and driving yourself crazy, I didn't do that, and it worked. And I saw a few other videos and read some information about people doing the same thing, just sort of basically just using a measurement and a certain set measurement that they use, and it works. And that's what I do. So try it. What do you have to lose other than pulling your hair out and being a chemist in a laboratory over like 2 weeks? You don't have to do that. I don't think in the olden days they had a digital weigher, and I don't think they were writing down 15 million calculations to make the original starters. So, question, why is everybody making sourdough and making starters? Well, I first tried doing this when I couldn't find yeast in the stores. I have found some dry packets of yeast in a few stores, but not many. And I can't find the baker's yeast in a jar or the block of yeast. They're gone. Maybe you have them where you are, but I can't find them right now. So that's why I made a starter, and I'm making some bread. And it's working. So make your own starter. Try it. This worked for me. And I hope it works for you. See how nice and frothy that starter is?
Works for me.